Hey WordNerds! Something I've learned over years of writing is that my process for editing is always completely different each time. Each project has its own unique set of challenges, and one of the biggest sets of challenges for this project is the quarantine/plague going on, and the fact that none of the print shops are open. And normally at this stage, after I'm finished drafting and I'm ready to start making notes to work towards editing, I print out my entire manuscript and read it over in one sitting. And of course, I can't do that right now. There are no staples open and my printer has been broken for forever. So that is not an option at this point. I've also noticed that with Corona happening, my process is changing in other big ways. Mainly, as you can see, the table I've spread my notes all over. Something you generally can't do in Starbucks without getting kicked out. I usually work in coffee shops. After I drop the small child off, I am in Starbucks or Sears Coffee or wherever all day. And I generally really enjoy the atmosphere of coffee shops, but you simply cannot spread your notes all over the table, all over the walls, which I'll show you in a second. So having the freedom to be able to do that is actually kind of cool. So in ways, this crisis is changing my plotting for the better, and ways it's more complicated and it's more difficult, like not being able to print off my manuscript, but finding ways to adapt. So before I get into the rest of how this process is going, because it is going to be different every time with every different project, I'll just let you know a little bit about what I'm working on right now. I am currently working on the manuscript titled tentatively Shadow Grove, aka Bisexual Plant Druids and Sexy Demon Kings, a working title. There are two point of views in the Druid book. One of them is the Druid, that's her on this table, and the other one is the thief. Forgive my extremely messiness, but here you can see that the thief has his own little plot section, which is tragically short. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I've split the scenes so that I can concentrate on each of their plot lines separately. And my current strategy is to copy from the sticky notes to the cue cards. And with these cue cards, all of the edits I want to do for each chapter are on the back here. Deep down, I suspect of myself that this transfer from sticky note to cue card started as a procrastination technique. But it seems to actually be working. Because I can see the plot laid out in front of me, I am able to then see what I need to change, the scenes I need to add, the scenes I need to take out. I have decided I'm going to take out an entire character that doesn't need to be there, solely because this is laid out in front of me and I can see how the scenes are working and fitting together and how they're not. Regardless of what my process is and how it changes from project to project, there is always some form of this. I always have some way to have each scene individually laid out in front of me so that I can see how the story has turned out versus how I first pictured it. That always helps me to feel less overwhelmed going into the edits process, and it also helps me figure out what actually needs to be done as far as changes. Often for me, the next step would have been printing out the manuscript and writing all the changes in each chapter, and then I would only have to do one pass through. But because that's not possible right now, I am doing the bigger changes on the scene cards. And actually, this has worked out really well for this manuscript because the Druid book seems to be needing a lot more structural edits than usual. This draft is a lot messier than what I usually produce. I have no idea why that might be, because I wrote out a very detailed plot outline and then apparently mostly ignored it. So thanks for that, Past Aaron. That's super cool of you. I've done this before where I write out a plot line and then mostly ignore it. Usually this results in missing big chunks, big scenes, character development that needed to happen and didn't. As soon as I was done writing this particular manuscript, I knew that the thief's POV had really been ignored compared to the Druid's. I don't know why that happened. Apparently I found the Druid story more compelling at the time, and now I need to go back and flesh out the thief's scenes. And writing out the thief and the druid's scenes individually and putting them in different spots really illuminated that for me and showed me there are far less scenes where the thief is in them compared to the druid, and I really need to have a balance. So part of what I needed to do while writing out the cue cards was figure out new scenes for the thief and where they would fit in, so that is something that the cue cards really helped with. I should be done with the cue cards sometime this week, and then I can dive into my edits. If you were at last Sunday's live chat where Megan ambushed us all with making goals for the week, you will know that mine was actually finish these cue cards so that I could start on the revisions. The reason I made this goal was because no matter how much the rest of my process changes, one thing remains the same every time, and that is that I become freaked out and overwhelmed with the idea of diving into revisions and put it off for as long as possible. The one great thing about knowing your own process is that you know to expect these types of feelings. I know that every time I go to start my revisions, I will get overwhelmed, I will get freaked out, I will have to fight the urge to procrastinate. But I also know that eventually when I do start my edits, those feelings go away. So that's really it. My editing process in the time of the apocalypse, how it has changed, how it has remained the same. Let me know what you guys are experiencing. If you are starting to do new things for your editing process, for your writing process, or even if reading has changed for you in quarantine, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on Sundays, we have our live chat and we would love to see you there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.